Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Joe Prince Wright, and welcome to the latest Pro Soccer Talk as Nick Mendola in Buffalo, New York, and Andy Edwards in Kansas City, a freezing cold Kansas City, joins me today. And lads, it's a pleasure to have you, as always, to talk all things Premier League. But first things first, Nick, how's it in your neck of the woods, and what have you enjoyed from the action over the last week?
You know, it's snowy here. Usually Buffalo gets a little bit of a bad rap because it doesn't snow all the time, but when it does, it pounds us, and we got that. So the shoveling muscles are good. I am invigorated by the return of the Champions League because, some good games to start and some good matchups, and sometimes we don't get that. So I'm buzzing about a competition that usually doesn't catch my attention for a couple more rounds.
Andy, talking about competition, I mean, you and Nick probably have a competition for shoveling and snow and cold, right?
Not at the moment. No, there's no point right now. We're on day 7 in a row of getting some amount of snow. So by the time it's gone, it's back. So we have power today. So that's really all I can say. That's the positive. We're spinning it positive. And I'm just happy to talk to you guys.
Talking about positive, it's, 55 degrees and rainy here in England. So, don't want to rub it in, lads, but it's practically tropical. And you wouldn't say that often about England or the UK in general. But it's great to chat. As always, lots of crazy stuff going on around the Premier League with the top 4 race, title battle, kind of Man City pulling away again. But the bottom of the table on the relegation picture is really starting to get interesting, with Fulham trying hard to get themselves out of danger. So, let's get things kicked off with Pro Soccer Talk this week. We've got a lot to talk about across the Premier League. And, of course, we can grab a beer transatlantically. So cheers to you, boys. Pleasure as always. And perfect unison. Look at that. And let's get cracking for PST this week. First big news topic, West Ham United. This is a team we have not spoken about that often this season, so we hold our hands up. We didn't expect David Moyes' side to keep this going. I don't think many people did, but gents, they're in the top 4 conversation. When you look at them after 24 games this season, they've already picked up more points than they did an entire campaign last time out. Only Man City have more points than them in 2021 so far. So, Nick Mendola, can West Ham United shock everyone and finish in the Champions League spot?
No. I mean, so I'm sorry. Can they? Yes. Can they? Yes. But this is I want to compliment them before I get to that downer note. I get excited watching them play. I think they're bringing a level of quality off the bench and options that are keeping us on our toes. And why I want to kind of compliment David Moyes is because I haven't probably for a decade. And it feels like he's been in compliment quarantine because he left West Ham he left Everton for this Manchester United position that we find out he felt like he couldn't really turn down. And there's a trip to Spain, there's Sunderland and making terrible comments. And all of a sudden, I heard Tim Howard maybe about a month ago on our broadcast talking about how the David Moyes he knew was this kind of disciplinarian. You're going to understand what you need to do, but also not averse to style and not averse to those things. And it seemed like when he left Everton after the Manchester United thing, got lumped in with those Big Sams and those Tony Pulises and those English team savers. And maybe that's not what he is. And credit to West Ham for letting him stick around and build this thing, because they look like a real team and with some real exciting pieces as well.
And Andy, before I move on to your thoughts on the Hammers, I just want to say the next 6 games for West Ham are particularly tough. Tottenham, Man City, Leeds, Man United, Arsenal, Wolves, and they have Leicester as well if you throw it in a little bit further down the stretch. So, but after that, they have a very easy run-in. They only have one of the big 6 for the rest of the season. So is this perhaps a good time for West Ham when they're in great form, winning games, to take on these bigger teams that are in and around them, to really test themselves? And then maybe in a month's time, we will be even more seriously saying, hey, Moyes is going to get West Ham in the top 4 in the Champions League.
Yeah, the great thing about West Ham is I think we're going to know pretty quickly, maybe 2 games into that 6-game run right there, we're going to have an idea of if they can keep this going against some of the bigger teams. Because if you look at the last couple months, they've not really played anyone. Now, credit to them, they have picked up the results that they have had to do during that time to keep this push going. They got really a lot of their big wins of the season earlier on in the campaign. And so if you compare the first half of the season to the second half of the season for West Ham, they're better now than they were then. And if you look at a lot of those big teams, you can take Tottenham, you can take Liverpool, Arsenal, I think you could also throw in there. Not as good now as they were earlier. So like it feels like there's a bit of a changing of the top six at the moment. And the fact that West Ham have this form going into this run of games and that they are having a very, very strong season at a time when some of those other top six teams are really struggling, it kind of feels like it's lining up perfectly for someone new to jump into that group. And I welcome it wholeheartedly because, having the six teams every season, the same six, it's interesting what order they're going to finish in amongst themselves. But it's nice to have somebody new jump into there and then see if they can establish themselves longer term.
Really interesting you just said that, Andy, because this kind of reminds me of back in 2016 when obviously Leicester won the title, Southampton finished 6th, West Ham finished 7th, and they were there all season long under Slaven Bilic at Upton Park. They were playing very attractive football, attacking fullbacks, kind of similar in a lot of ways. And you'd have to say they got into the Europa League on that occasion, albeit the qualifying stages, but this is a club that is built for Europe. Of course, then they were kind of moving into the London Stadium. We know about all the situation, shall we say, around that with the fans not being too happy with that atmosphere at the new home and the move from their heartbeat of the club at Upton Park. But this shouldn't be as surprising as it is. Maybe this is why West Ham are just flown under the radar a little bit, because if they got it right from a recruitment point of view, then they should really be in and around the top 6, given the size of the club that they are and they can be. So, Nick, I'm looking at, for the run-in here, Mikel Antonio has to be fit. That's the key here. He gives them a total different dimension up top. They've had some injuries. They've kind of weathered that pretty well at different times this season when he has been out injured. But what is the key for West Ham here to try and keep this together? Because we do see a lot of teams challenge right up until the last month or two of the season to break into that top 4. We saw it with Leicester last season and then just run out of steam. So what gives West Ham the edge, if they do have the edge, over some of the traditional heavyweights in this top 4 battle?
Yeah, if I'm making the case for them, obviously not having that fixture congestion is the biggest and most massive thing. But it also reminds me, and this is a team that maybe not many of you will remember for good reason, but when Newcastle made the Europa League, they finished 5th under Alan Pardew. And that was a team that had some new faces. It had Johan Cabaye, who was kind of unknown, and Papi Cisse showed up and just scored a ton of goals. Ben Arfa was their wild card. And there were guys at the back who were mainstays for them who kind of kept that culture. There was Colaccini and Gutierrez. And when I look at West Ham, I see a team that is getting those unlikely goals from Souček. And Antonio knows what he wants to do with this team. Ogbonna has been through some rough times there. Lingard might be their mid-season wild card, right? So I think there is definitely a chance for them to get there. When I said no off the bat, I want to apologize to West Ham fans. It's just because I think there are 4 teams that I wouldn't want to bet them to pass one of them. If you tell me, will they finish 5th, I'd say very, very good chance. But yeah, so the lack of schedule congestion, and also you also have some players who are getting used to this, used to the league still. So in addition to your canny Premier League operators, your Craig Dawsons, right? You have Declan Rice at the pace of his peak of his powers, it seems, but also Jared Bowen still figuring it out. Ben Rama still figuring it out.
Yeah.
There's reason to be excited about them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the biggest, like you mentioned Tim Howard's comments on Everton and David Moyes. That's the biggest surprise to me, perhaps, that we all kind of just forgot about. When he was at Everton, they were actually quite a good team to watch and delivered a lot of great attacking moments, whether it be Tim Cahill or Marouane Fellaini, and players coming from midfield, breaking, scoring goals, a very good style of play, but solid defensively. So they have that solid defense. And you brought up a lot of names there, like Bowen, you've got Yarmolenko, Antonio, Fornals, a lot of really good options. And obviously Souček chipping in as well. And that formation is settled. They've been fairly lucky with injuries. So, yeah, Andy, I know you look like you want to jump in here, but yeah. West Ham, we're getting too excited about them because I feel like we've gone from they're not going to finish in the top 4 to that. Oh, they definitely are.
No, I think they do have a chance, and I outlined all the reasons why. I'm just thinking about David Moyes as Nick was talking there. I don't think David Moyes has changed at all, ever. And if you rank the most progressive and expansive type managers with the most defensive and least adventurous, he's exactly where he's always been in terms of himself. But where it is different is where he falls in the pecking order, because the game has changed so much in 15 years, really, since the best of that Everton team. Almost like it's almost been 15 years since that. So the game has changed a lot. He has not. And I think there is still a place for someone who has a bit of a pragmatic approach, somebody who's not going to overextend themselves and open themselves up to counterattacking chances the way that a lot of teams do in the league. Teams come into the Premier League especially. I mean, look at Leeds, the best example. Think they're going to come in and play a certain way, and you find out very quickly you're not going to play that way, or you're not going to have success if you do so. And David Moyes just knows who he is, and he knows who his team is. It seems like the players on that team fit that style as well. And so it's a very functional team. I think that's the best word I can probably come up with. Is it makes sense, it functions, all the pieces work together, it works hard, the no days off cliche. There's a lot to like about that team. I tend to agree with Nick, though. They feel more like 6th or 7th than they do to 4th to me. But a couple of results in the coming weeks in this run of games against the top 6, and that completely changes.
Absolutely. I think West Ham have been trying to put it together for many years now. A lot of expensive acquisitions haven't quite worked out, but Moyes has found a way to get that balance, a few canny signings, and we'll wait and see. But finally, to finish on this, I look at Chelsea, I look at Leicester City, Tottenham, maybe even Arsenal, Everton, Villa. They're right in that group of teams now. You don't even really say that United and City look like they're guaranteed to finish in the top 4. So this is an opportunity. And I think that West Ham, in this crazy season, as Nick mentioned, without any European competitions to worry about, they might just have the edge. That might give them the edge to me. They have to get lucky with injuries, and they're kind of riding the crest of a wave right now. So I think if they don't maybe pick up 2 or 3 wins out of the next 6 games, which are quite tough, David Moyes would be quite disappointed, because this is a perfect time for them to play against those kind of teams. Imagine,
if you will, a world where Jesse Lingard keeps Manchester United out of the top 4.
Yeah,
perfect.
Ollie will not be happy. Ollie would not be happy with that. So
yeah, let me chime in here real quick. One more point on West Ham. They sold Sebastian Haller, believe previous club record signing in January. Gone, 3 goals first half of the season. They signed Saeed Benrahma, new club record signing from Brentford in the summer. He has not scored a Premier League goal for this team, and they are where they are. One of the biggest arguments that I made for Chelsea last week was they signed Werner and Havertz and have gotten nothing from those 2 this season. If they have even an average final 12 or 14, 15 games to the season, that changes everything. Saeed Benrahma scoring 4 goals and 5 assists over the last 3 or 4 months of this season. West Ham are a completely different team.
And to finish up, David Moyes still thinks they have another few levels to go, which is quite frightening, really. He said that. He said, we're just kind of playing within ourselves. We've got a few more notches to go up, and he thinks they can do even better. So let's not sleep on the hammers. And for the latest reaction, news, and analysis on them and this big stretch of games coming up, head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com, and we'll keep you covered with that developing battle for the top 4 spots. Talking about the top 4 spots, gents, Manchester City, Manchester United, big Manchester derby coming up on March the 6th. We can pretty much say that Man City are going to finish in the top 4. I mean, they're running away with things at the moment on this incredible run at the top of the table. The quadruple, maybe we're talking about that this season already. Might be a little bit too early, but it feels quite ominous. And, I mean, Man United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer would just take 1 trophy at this point. But Nick Mandola, Pep Guardiola and City, they keep winning. I asked him about, he had some comments about, we don't have a Neymar, we don't have an Mbappe, we don't have a Messi. And I said, what do you prefer? One of those superstars or having a total team approach that's working now? And he said, I'll take one of those players that scores 4 goals every game and runs past everyone. But is the quadruple possible? I mean, again, we might be getting ahead of ourselves here, but if they were to do that, that would surely be Guardiola's best achievement as a manager, right? Because the injuries they faced in this crazy congested season, to blow away opponents like they are right now is something special.
Yeah, we're going to look at the last 4 years, beginning with that incredible title win, the running away with it win, which was arguably their kind of misnomer, the way Liverpool had it last year, where definitely deserved champions, but not by that much. And I think we'll look at it as one of the most dominant periods, given the money in the game, given the quality of this league from top to bottom, the sort of a different kind of no days off that Andy references. It's a special team. It's a special group. What I love is how he's doing it differently. You can't call him a one-trick possession pony anymore. Ruben Diaz, if his name was Robert Davis is a big, bruising, scary man. But I think maybe because he's Portuguese, we're not quite noticing that he is this traditional, good with his feet, don't get me wrong, but traditional, powerful center back. What I like about them, and we're seeing it with Gundogan now, is Kevin De Bruyne. If you've watched Pep over the years talk about De Bruyne, and De Bruyne let it slip at the end of last year when he accepted his award for Premier League Player of the Year, or was he? Yeah, Premier League Player of the Year. He said, "I'm blessed here that Guardiola has basically told me do what you want. Like if you score and you keep making 4 key passes a game, you do what you want." And now we're seeing kind of Gundogan, not the same, but in that role. Sane had that kind of privilege a couple of years ago. David Silva would get that for a half hour every game. And I think that's what's kind of pretty here. This is when you've seen those documentaries about Messi, how he doesn't necessarily run the whole game, but he just waits until he can find that piece of acreage and go for it. That's what I'm seeing here. And that's what I'm so impressed with, is this man whose system is so important for him carves out a piece that can go wherever it wants and still be part of that system, which is like, it's.
Andy, is your mind blown by this as well? Because even though De Bruyne, Aguero, and several others have been out injured for a large chunk of this season, they're almost the B team stepping up. Remember that famous quote from Mourinho that Man City's B team could win the Premier League title? I mean, you got Stones, been brilliant, absolute rock at the heart of the defence. Gundogan, Phil Foden, Raheem Sterling stepping up as a striker sometimes. I mean, has that been the most impressive thing for you, that the squad and the players you wouldn't have thought are stepping up have been stepping up?
Yeah, and I'll go so far as to say that I think it's probably his best coaching job of his entire career. And I know that, he had some very, very successful seasons at both Barcelona and Bayern Munich. But if you look at, I guess, the level of 1 through 20 competition in the Premier League and compare it to La Liga, compared to the Bundesliga, it's not even, it's not even close. It's night and day, the difference between the two. And for them to be able to do this to not most of the teams in the Premier League, but to all of the teams in the Premier League the way that they have, and to remake that team into something completely new, as Nick said, and change the identity of who they are and who he is. I mean, he has completely, I don't want to say sacrifice, but he has given up his number one core idea or ideas of how a team should play on the field, and said, all right, well, that's not going to work for this group. I'm going to find a different solution to put this group of players into the position to win the title this season, because that's all I care about. I care about that more than, the principles and the ideas. And he's just done it. And it's been really, really impressive. And when was the last time we saw a defense that was this suffocating? I'm looking at the expected goals here. They're well under 1 per game in terms of expected goals allowed. The next closest is almost a half goal more, and that's still Liverpool, which is why I can't quite give up hope on them, that they're still. But Man City are just, they're so far. I'll say it this way: they are better than everyone else this season than Liverpool were last season, because last season, the gap was more about everybody else than it was about Liverpool. This season, by the end of the season, if it's 15 or 20 or 25, it will be 95% about Manchester City, because they're that good this year.
What about the other side of Manchester? Manchester United, obviously, with this derby kind of looming in a few weeks from now on March the 6th. Pogba's injured. He may be back for that game, but probably won't start considering how long he's been out. They've been dropping points against Sheffield United, Everton, West Brom. Nick, United, are they absolutely nailed on to finish in the top 4? Because I'm looking at the centre-backs and David De Gea, and that partnership there just seems to be coughing up goals and mistakes, which could cost them dear at the end of the season, right?
Yeah, I don't know that they're nailed on, but I think it's close. I don't think it's too far off. There are some teams that you wouldn't be surprised to see catch them. And I listen, it's Nick Mendola here on Pro Soccer Talk. So clearly, as I go to the third person, I'm going to rip Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But I don't mean this in that way. But if you were to tell me Arsenal's on the rise, and because they're grasping Mikel Arteta's system, or Tottenham's on the rise because they're, I'm not saying that. I'm just, for the example, they're going to be on the rise because Mourinho's been there. If you were to tell me Solskjaer's message has finally gotten through to them, and that's why they're in the top 4, that's the one that feels a little more dicey to me. And the point I want to make beyond that is, I still don't see a philosophy in the midfield. When Pogba's out there, I think he masks a lot of stuff because his vision, he's got that chance to hit that 70-yard ball right on from the deep right of his own half onto his left wing's foot for a great first touch. But I'm still not seeing the answer without Bruno Fernandes. And that's what we saw Saturday or Sunday, whichever day it was, a moment of brilliance, a side volley of absolutely supreme technical brilliance off a great cross. But I'm still waiting to see that day when the other players around him look like they're not just components of, or they look like components, I'm sorry, not just people supporting Bruno Fernandes.
And for me, it's like, what is a successful season for United? They clearly made some strides forward, be it just because of Bruno Fernandes, but over the last 12 months, Solskjaer's got something within them where there is maybe a bit of a plan, where they aren't just the counter-attacking team anymore, and they can kind of be a bit more fluid and figure games out. But Andy, top 4 and winning a trophy, be it the FA Cup or Europa League, that is a good season, and that's progress for Solskjaer and Manchester United, isn't it?
Yes and no. I mean, so I'm looking at their finishes in recent seasons here. This is year number 8, by the way, since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. 8 years. I can't believe it. In those seasons since then, they have finished 7th, 4th, 5th, 6th, 2nd, 6th, and 3rd. So they finished in the top 4 3 times. They finished in the top 3 2 times, and they finished in the top 2 1 time. So if they can finish second, I think regardless of winning another trophy, I think you can say it's a successful season for the fact that they have progressed and they have brought themselves closer to being in the title conversation once again, because as those finishes would indicate, they've not been in a title race or a title conversation for 8 years since Sir Alex Ferguson retired. So just, I guess, reestablishing themselves into relevance in the title conversation would be a massive step forward for Manchester United. And they have, they've squandered a lot of money on some good signings, but a lot of bad signings in recent years. I think a lot of it has had to do with where their kind of stature in the game had fallen to during that period. And nobody really wanted to touch them at that point. If they can finish in that second spot this year and sell themselves this summer as, we're going for the title, we want to get back on top and we actually have a legitimate chance, I think it completely changes their recruitment going forward. And so this is more of a foundational season, I guess, for Manchester United. If Ole is going to be the man going forward, that will always be a conversation for another day. But I think second place is a huge accomplishment for them this season, because look at that team. It's not a title winning team. It's probably not even a second place team, but Bruno Fernandes is just of quality that none of the other stuff matters.
And Rashford. I want to say he's had a lot of off games recently, but I think he's a spectacular, powerful player who maybe is going through a bit of a dip in form. The only thing is, guys, I've said it every week, and I'm sorry to do it again. When are they going to beat somebody? When are they going to beat somebody? The wins are Saints, Fulham, Burnley, Villa, which looks great right now, Wolves, Leeds, Sheffield United, West Ham, Southampton, West Brom, Everton, Newcastle, Brighton. Missing from that list, the traditional Big Six. So they've got Chelsea coming up. They've got Man City coming up. That'll be their chance. They'll have Spurs again. But are they going to get through this season without taking a win off a big team?
Yeah, that's interesting. And that kind of builds in, I think, to all the transfer news and hype around them. Everything is saying they're going to go and buy at least one big centre-back this summer. And maybe in those big games, they've sat back in a lot of 0-0 ties, close games, haven't want to open themselves up and expose themselves, because they know deep down there are defensive mistakes there. And going into a game against Man City, that is not the feeling you want to have as any team, let alone your biggest crosstown rivals. So at PST, we'll keep you updated with the latest news on the Manchester derby ahead of that game, and team news, stream links, wherever you can watch that in the USA. And it's going to be a fun one. And who knows, Man City could have a wobble in the next few weeks and it could be pivotal in the title race, but seems a bit ominous right now. So yeah, Andy's not buying that one bit. Okay, let's move on to the next section. And someone isn't buying Christian Pulisic, and that is Chelsea manager Thomas Tuchel. Should we be concerned as fans of the US men's national team? I know a lot of the Stars and Stripes fans out there aren't best pleased with the way that Pulisic has been handled early on in the Tuchel era at Chelsea. He hasn't started in the Premier League for him yet. some of these comments were quite concerning after he didn't feature in their most recent game in the Premier League. And Thomas Tuchel said that Pulisic, I'm going to quote him here, he deserves to start or to come in, but I could only use 3 guys off the bench. I hope he keeps on going and he will make an important impact for us in the future. So Nick Mendola, discuss. Is Pulisic the man on the outside looking in here for Chelsea? Is he kind of unfortunate to not be playing, or I don't know what to make of this?
I would encourage everyone out there, if they have a minute, to read what Andy wrote about this at Pro Soccer Talk, because I thought it opened a lot of eyes. So I'll try not to step on his toes with some of those points he's sure to make. I think that in some ways he has to get out of Thomas Tuchel has to get out of that mindset of, this is the guy I brought into Dortmund and babied him through the ranks. And then I went to Paris for a couple of years while this guy became a legitimate star. And so that's one thing. And I think that is one of the reasons that I'm concerned. But when I look at Pulisic over the last 3 seasons, I see a guy who is thrived last year at Chelsea when it was, let's be honest, it was kind of about him. It was get it to him and he's going to shoot. Get it to him in combination, he's going to shoot. And Chelsea is understandably so concerned with working everybody else into the equation. Werner in particular, who, by the way, I said last week, he's going to figure it out. I think he might. And I want to see him because I loved watching him play last year, the poor man's Erling Haaland. But I am just excited to see whether or not he's given the keys to the kingdom, because as a bit player, he's going to do fine. He has that special electric skill set where he can cut through people and he knows how to use space. But if he's treated as, and this is crazy to say, but it is Chelsea, if he's treated more as a Hazard character and the offense is going to go through him, then I'm not worried at all, because Tuchel's going to just keep playing him.
Andy, not to step on your toes by the post you wrote at PST that I know you're going to discuss, but is it a case of Pulisic? He's a pure winger, right? We all agree that's his best position. Out wide, on the left, that's his best position. So now Chelsea play a 3-4-2-1 with wing backs. Alonso on one wing, Hudson-Odoi in the other. So Tuchel is kind of saying, look, the squad I have, this is the best formation to get the best out of everyone. And sorry, Christian, but you're kind of the odd man out here. I mean, is he the right player at Chelsea, but in the wrong time? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so, and that was kind of my point with the, just some thoughts on Tuchel's comments after the game on Monday was, a lot of people were upset. Well, why is he not getting in? Why is he not giving him an opportunity? And I'm just looking at the team. Where you're not going to play him at left wing back. You're not going to play him at right. There's nothing in his game that is anything defensive whatsoever, and so you are sacrificing. By putting him into one of those positions, everything that Thomas Tuchel has worked to build over the first month in charge of that team, that's not going to happen. And so through the middle, yeah, he could play alongside, Timo Werner or Kai Havertz or whoever's going to play underneath of maybe Tammy Abraham or Olivier Giroud, whatever the combination of 3 players up top is going to be, he could function in there, but it's not his best area of the field. He's not great in those tight spaces. He's much better when he gets a little bit of room to work one-on-one against a defender. And so that just doesn't exist in the formation that Tuchel keeps trotting out there. And the thing that I would worry the most about, and Chelsea fans probably not going to be too worried about it, but from a U.S. men's national team perspective, the fact that they're winning without him, every win that they pick up without him in the lineup or coming off the bench, he gets a little farther from that squad, because when a new manager comes in, they have preconceived ideas. They try them out. They are either confirmed or denied by what happens on the field. And then based on that, they go forward with that information. And if the information that Thomas Tuchel has is that we win playing this way, Christian Pulisic doesn't fit into playing this way, Christian Pulisic's not going to play for Chelsea under Thomas Tuchel. And that would be the biggest worry. The longer the winning goes on, it's actually the worse it can be for Pulisic at Chelsea.
And of course, Tuchel knows Pulisic. He gave him his debut 5 years ago at Dortmund. So he knows all about his capability. I spoke to him after his first game in charge. He said, Pulisic is a great character. He knows the way I operate. He's going to be very important. So it's still early days. We shouldn't get too carried away. But yeah, Mason Mount and Werner really taking their chance underneath that central striker in those 2 central attacking areas. And Nick, I know you want to add something, but I'm just going to put this out there. Does Pulisic go out on loan somewhere at the end of the season? Is it that drastic that he needs to go and play regular minutes in a couple of big years for the US, a World Cup coming up? Can the US afford to have Pulisic on the bench at Chelsea being third choice attacking midfielder?
So if we're having these same discussions then sure, let's talk about that. But here's one thing I want to note. I've actually watched quite a bit of Dortmund over the years for whatever reason. Actually, they're our sister city here in Buffalo, and we had an exchange student when I was in high school. And so whatever, it's kind of an affinity I had to them. When he took over, I remember that they were awesome when he took over Dortmund, Tuchel. It was a 4-1-4-1. They didn't lose their first, it was 15 or 16 games, but there were some draws at the end. And then the rest of the year, you saw the 4-1-4-1 a bit, but he adapted. And that's kind of the thing. He's a chameleon. He is a true manager. And you'll have those games coming up where Chelsea's going to try out something that their fans haven't seen before under him, and they're going to lose. And everyone's going to say, why did he do that? Well, it's because he's trying stuff out. And when he had the best success that first year at Dortmund, he finished that year playing mostly a 4-3-3. That's going to come at some point. And if you believe that Tuchel might still see that as, Werner on the left and Abraham in the middle and Ziyech on the right, then sure. Okay, that you should be worried. But I think when he goes to a 4-3-3, he's going to use Christian Pulisic at least a few times. And right now, the three at the back is something we just haven't seen a lot out of Thomas Tuchel. And what he's saying is, I've got Silva, I've got Azpilicueta, I've got Rudiger, I've got these pieces, these veteran pieces that can play in a back three, and we'll sort out this offense that has been a problem. Well, he sorted out the defense pretty quick. So at the risk of running on too much, this guy is a manager, whether it works or not, who's going to shift your formation all the time. And right now, it's not one that favors Pulisic.
So we'll have the latest news on Christian Pulisic up on Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com with Pulisic Watch. We'll follow his every move. A big few months coming up for the US men's national team. We're going to see if he can get back in this Chelsea lineup, and we'll keep you updated with how that goes for the Pennsylvanian Messi. Okay, big news coming up is obviously the next match week, and that's match week 25. Let's preview it now, gents. This is an interesting match week because when we think back to when these teams met earlier in the season, we're in that situation now where they're meeting for the second time of the campaign. Things have changed drastically for some of these teams since they met earlier on the season, around October in the full time. So Arsenal against Manchester City. City edged that game last time out, but you can clearly see which team has kicked on since then. Nick Mendola, what do you expect this weekend from Arsenal, Manchester City? Because, Arteta knows City very well. So there's one coach who is going to kind of put together a master plan like he did in the FA Cup last season. He can get the better of Pep Guardiola, can't he?
Yeah, he can. My thing with this match, which I'm super excited about, is I think Arsenal they're improved a lot. It helps when Aubameyang's flying and Saka's flying. And who knows if we're going to see Thomas? That might be the key point here. But what City showed us, I would argue, brought upon the first time they played Arsenal this year, as well as Liverpool did the same thing. They forced Aubameyang onto an island out on the left, and I feel like it took him 2 months to figure out how to get out of there. And that's what I'll be looking at, because as much as I love Saka, and I think he can cause a lot of problems, when Aubameyang's finishing the way he did, think of those goals this weekend. That was the penalty, whatever. But that first one, when he's driving towards the right and he just snaps off this quick shot back towards the near post, and the keeper's like, oh no. There's that sort of elite level of, believe it or not, I think there are comparisons in the finishing styles of Kane and Aubameyang for this, where it's not always the same finish into the same part of the net. So he's the key for me. And Pep right now is on a different defensive planet to even then, and that was a shutout.
Andy, anything to add on this game? Because, Arsenal, they regressed, obviously, after winning the FA Cup last season, and they seem like they figured it out under Arteta, or at least against the big boys, but just a really strange team to kind of predict how they're going to play week to week, right?
Yeah, almost as difficult to predict as Leeds United, and that's really saying something. I think Nick's right to highlight Aubameyang there as being the key going to this game, because you have to almost look and force yourself to find a way that Arsenal have a chance in this game to hang with Manchester City, and he is probably the answer. And so, based on what we've talked about this week with Manchester City and what Guardiola has done to turn this team into a defensive juggernaut, I think he'll have a plan for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to, again, probably, whether he's going to play through the middle, whether he's going to play on the left, cutting inside, wherever it's going to be, he's not going to have the looks at goal that he had on the weekend. And cutting off that supply to him, I think is going to be the number one priority for Manchester City defensively. And for all the talk of what they're doing defensively, their possession numbers are also still really, really strong. So there's a bit of defending by possession, defending by attacking that exists with them. And so if Thomas Partey is not going to be able to play and Aubameyang is not going to be effective, I don't know what Arsenal do in this game to not get beaten 3-0 by a team that is so heads and shoulders above everybody else in the league.
And in great form. Like John Stones, I can just see it. I'm going to predict it now. When he empties his pockets at the end of the game, when he gets home, car keys, wallet, probably Aubameyang as well. It's going to be in there. So just going to say that's my prediction for that game. But okay, I got my popcorn ready here because Liverpool-Everton is coming up this weekend. Merseyside derby. This was memorable, but for probably all the wrong reasons earlier on this season when they played out an entertaining draw at Goodison Park. Van Dijk got injured, obviously, by Pickford. Big moment of Liverpool's season, as we knew then and have seen more and more so as the season's progressed. Nick, is it fair to say that both of these teams have underachieved since that meeting? And as we go into this game, are Everton the favourites to win it?
Ooh. That's a good question. Everton, to me, the biggest issue has been an inconsistency. When they are on song, as you like to say, it's a team that's hard to mess with. Richarlison, a physical, powerful, tricky player who can get the job done. And then when he's not there, you're kind of like, oh, and he hasn't scored in a while. So, between him, between Hamas, are we confident enough that they're going to get the job done? And the reason I say that is because the difference between Liverpool's game against Leipzig and Liverpool's game against, oh God, correct, help me guys. They just lost to, even in that City game is who made the mistakes, because Liverpool's goals yesterday were gifted to them. And that's great. Mane and Salah are going to score, and they didn't give up much of anything at the back. But that's the difference to me between most of Liverpool's bad performances and their good performances. I think they're on about the same level. I think they're still a really good team. They're just not getting those moments. And do I trust Everton to sort that out? And I'm just not at that point. I'll make a comparison to when we talked about West Ham earlier. There's something in the air once you've won that changes how your team operates. And I'm waiting for either one of those teams to take all the investment that they've had. And that's one of the reasons I believe in Leicester right now, is in their history, they've done it. They've kind of crossed that bridge, and I'm waiting for Everton or West Ham to do that.
Andy, what about you? You're looking forward to this Merseyside derby because Liverpool had a lot of critics, but Jurgen Klopp's kind of come out firing after that Champions League win and saying, we didn't slip up when everyone expected us to. So defensively, can they hold it together? And I guess Calvert-Lewin, his fitness status is key to this battle as well, isn't it?
I mean, I'm looking at the goals scored here for Everton this season, and I would say that's probably a pretty good observation. 13 for Calvert-Lewin this season. James Rodriguez with 5. Nobody else has more than 3 on that entire team. And Gylfi Sigurdsson's 3, I think a couple are from the penalty spot, 1 probably a free kick. Michael Keane has 3. So it drops off very, very quickly. And all of that, more numbers I'm looking at here as you guys are talking. Expected goals for this Everton team. Anybody want to guess out of 20 teams where they rank?
13.
15.
Ooh. They are bottom 6 in the Premier League in terms of expected goals for, and they're also bottom half in expected goals against as well. So I feel like they have massively overachieved for the majority of the season. And you can't base everything on those 2 metrics, but if you look at the team and the way that they play, they're not exciting. They're not creative or inventive. That there's a little bit of flair when James Rodriguez is on his day, but that's about it. They're not as solid defensively as they probably should be. 1, given the lack of offensive kind of adventure that they go on, but 2, also for having Carlo Ancelotti as the manager. And so it's just it's not a team that I take seriously when we talk about this top 6 and top 5 and top 4. And I think for a Liverpool team that, I'm not going to jump off board yet, that I still think is going to finish top 4. I don't think Liverpool have that much trouble with them this weekend. And maybe this is the one where they can get a big win, they can stop the negative momentum and start to right the ship for the rest of the season.
It's a huge game. The three of a team. If you win this game, not just because it's 3 points, but you beat your rivals, positive momentum. And we're entering the business end of the season now, lads. I mean, we got 14, 15 game weeks to go. This is when it starts to get very serious. And all of a sudden, it feels like it's got here very quickly with all the midweek games and weekend and just the congested schedule. So, a lot to look forward to. I will be looking forward to going to St Mary's Stadium this weekend, I think. Southampton host Chelsea. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to expect for this one for the Saints. Obviously, earlier on the season, they drew 3-3 at Stamford Bridge with a Yannick Vestergaard equaliser late on. And that kind of highlighted all of Chelsea's defensive flaws under Frank Lampard, which they've since cleaned up under Thomas Tuchel, which we've spoken about. So Chelsea have definitely improved. For Saints, I mean, the question is, will they ever win again? They've come off a club worst in a 135-year history. They have never lost 6 games in a row in the league, and they've just done that. Yes, VAR decisions, injuries, maybe running out of steam has come into that. But Nick, Saints, Chelsea, what you're looking forward to in this game? Because if you think about it, this could be a really good game, open, attacking, entertaining. But what I've just said about both those teams maybe suggests it'll be tighter than it was earlier in the season.
You know, in these last 3 games we discussed, and I'm assuming, knowing where you're going, that we'll get to this in the 4th game as well. I look at that kind of guy in the middle of the park who controls things, and whether he's there or not there, in form or out of form, matters to me. Rodri, I think, has been incredible for about the last 2 months for Man City. Everton, on the flip side, missing Allen. That's, if he was playing, I'd probably tell you I think they win against Liverpool. I look at Saints and Chelsea. I look at what Jorginho has meant to Tuchel's system. And I look at a former Chelsea player as one who's going to be the key here. Because I think and he's done well against his former club because he's a fireball. When Oriol Romeo is going, and at his very best, I would not want to be on the same pitch as him as an opposition player. And I think he hasn't been at his best for a couple of weeks now. If he's going, Ward-Prowse has less to worry about trying to orchestrate stuff. Big Yannick Vestergaard is in better position as well. So that's what I'm going to look to here, because I don't think this is going to be anywhere near a 6-goal game. I think this could be a 1-0 or a 2-1 or a 2-0 game. And how Romeo plays, if you tell me in advance, I'll tell you who I think wins.
I'm looking forward to being on when you go to St Mary's now, the press is sat right behind the benches. So I'm looking forward to seeing Hasenhüttl and Tuchel going at it. Obviously, both coaching the Bundesliga for a long time, know each other very well. So I think that's another factor which makes this game even tighter to figure out. So, Andy, any thoughts on these two teams and where they've gone throughout the season as they've kind of dipped up and down, it's fair to say?
Yeah, I would just say it's been hard to watch Saints fall off the face of the earth, really, over the last. It has, because they were so enjoyable early in the season, and not just because they play some good stuff, but they're a hardworking team as well. And anytime you kind of marry those two things together within the same team, typically you're going to get good results, but it's going to be really enjoyable to watch. And they've got a bunch of individuals that are enjoyable to watch and pretty easy to root for. So, you know, they're safe from relegation. We have a weekly call every week where Joe, we have to kind of talk you off the ledge a little bit with Southampton. They're safe from relegation this season. Don't worry about it. But they've got some rebuilding to do, I think, in the summer for sure.
It's all about the FA Cup for Southampton now. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, moving on to the next big game in Matchweek 25, West Ham United against Tottenham. Big London derby. I think it's underrated by people who maybe aren't as familiar with London, but it's a huge, huge derby. And it's going to be, I mean, it may not be as crazy as the last game, right? Lanzini, last minute, Spurs 3-0 up. And then, of course, Lanzini coming in and scoring late on. Spurs have been more pragmatic since, right? Are West Ham the favourites going into this one, Nick?
No. I think it's going to be close. I think we still might see 3-3, but instead of 3 goals first, 3 goals later, it's 1-1, 1-1, 1-1. I'll tell you why. The defense at Spurs has been a real problem. Andy's pointed it out, rightfully so. The center backs have been an issue. Harry Kane, there's no one on this team right now, especially with Diop way down the pecking order, who is going to be able to handle him. So I'm expecting goals. And again, I'll stay on, let me stay on song. Let me stay on brand here. Declan Rice, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, 2 players who may well go about telling the tale of this game by their performances. So I do expect goals, and I'm actually very excited for this one. I think there are going to be a lot of moments that could swing it either way, and Moyes and Mourinho are going to be ready to tangle.
Andy, finish us off with this. What are your thoughts heading into this big London derby?
Nick, you're wrong. West Ham are favorites for this one, and that's
how weird of you.
It's a credit to them just as much, if not more, than it's a slight on Spurs. West Ham, we talked about them this week. They know who they are. They have an identity. They show up to play essentially the same way, same ideas every single game. It's not that at Tottenham. There is no idea. There's this idea of, well, they become a Mourinho team. They become very good defensively. They don't have a single good defender at the club. It's not going to happen. So then you have to pack the midfield in. You completely leave yourself helpless in the attacking half. And I do find it a bit ironic. And this is the Mourinho slander for the week. It took Jose Mourinho coming in and becoming the manager for them to actually become a one-man team with Harry Kane. For all the talk over the years of that being the case with Mauricio Pochettino as manager, it was never the case. It was always about the collective. And part of that is a lot of the players that are still around from those days have now aged out of the primes of their careers. And so Mourinho doesn't maybe have quite as much to work with, but they are now a one-man team, and it is all about Harry Kane. And if Harry Kane doesn't score one, assist one, they're going to lose. They're going to lose every game if he is not just at the very, very top of his game every time he steps on the field.
There you go, an incredibly optimistic valuation of Tottenham from Andy Edwards, who does support the Spurs. Let's wait and see how they get on this weekend against West Ham. Looking at some other big games, Fulham, Sheffield United coming up this weekend. That team's huge at the bottom of the table. Both those teams had some momentum in the relegation battle in recent weeks. Aston Villa against Leicester City, huge Midlands derby. Both teams doing well this season. And Brighton against Crystal Palace, the M23 derby, one of those rivalries where no one can really figure out how it quite happened, but it is a rivalry and it's going to be a big one. So we'll keep you updated on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com as Nick does his very best. What was that, a seagull or an eagle impression?
It's a seagull. It's a seagull.
Yeah, that's good. That was good. I can see that. And yeah, gents, a pleasure as always. Pro Soccer Talk will keep you covered with all the latest analysis on the Premier League. And I'll speak to you all very soon. Thanks, lads.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe. Make sure you subscribe to watch highlights all season long and join us at the weekend at 7 a.m. Eastern on NBCSN for Premier League mornings, and sign up for Peacock Premium, where you'll have access to 175 exclusive live games all season long.